February 28, 2021, the last day of the month. And tonight, as promised, we're going to have the free IELTS and OET Speaking Masterclass. So in a short while, Sir Philip Aitona, our senior lecturer for OET, is going to join us. Meanwhile, it's time to tag your friends. Ask them to join our free Facebook Live session for tonight. Well, the promise is this is going to last for approximately 1 hour, but depending on how talkative we are and depending on your questions, then we might extend up to 8:30 or 9 p.m. So it really doesn't matter how many minutes we're going to spend or how many hours we're going to spend for this masterclass. What's most important, you get to have an idea how to ace the most important subtest. Now you might want to ask, why is this the most important? Remember, if you are a registered nurse, then you have to get a 7 in speaking regardless of the destination. Be it USA, UK, Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, you need to get a 7 in speaking. Well, for the other subtests, just in case you get a 6 or a 6.5, still you have a destination. But for speaking, the minimum requirement is 7. Well, that's at least the case in IELTS. Sir Philip later on will explain to us what about the case in OET. So for now, allow me to mention a few updates that 9.09er has for our candidates. So, for those of you who are not informed yet, just recently, we gave this Valentine's gift to everyone. One-on-one coaching, 7 days a week from Monday to Sunday from as early as 8 a.m. Philippine time all the way to 5 a.m. Philippine time. So if you do the mathematics, that's 21 hours of available coaching slots every day. I hope that you're not going to message us and ask, Sir, wala po bang one-on-one coaching ng 5 a.m. to 8 a.m.? Well, ladies and gentlemen, those 3 hours, that's the time for our lecturers and coaches to rest. So we're already catering to all the needs of our reviewees, most especially our Middle East market. Why? Because if it's until 5 a.m. Philippine time, that's until 12 midnight in the Middle East. So that's good news number 1. Now, you might want to ask, how come 9.09er is able to accommodate literally everyone for one-on-one coaching every day? Well, that's because now we have a total of 36 IELTS and OET coaches. That means to say, we are here to make sure that everyone's needs will be accommodated. Remember, guys, that's 7 days a week. Now, that's update number 1. What about update number 2? Sir Brian told me earlier this morning that recently he was able to upload new classes to our dashboard. So that includes pronunciation and accent neutralization classes. And this March, remember, we are going to upload new content as well. There's content speaking, content writing, listening skills enhancement, reading skills enhancement, common mistakes in writing task 1, common mistakes in writing task 2, and common mistakes in speaking. So for those of you who are not familiar with how we do our review, by the way, these recorded classes are uploaded to the dashboard. So we conduct classes 3 times a day. There is 9 to 12 in the morning, 1 to 4 in the afternoon, and 6 to 9 in the evening. In the event that there is a class that you missed because you're working or because of time difference, nothing to worry because there are recorded versions which are uploaded to the dashboard. And as I checked earlier, the dashboard now contains more than 100 hours of recorded classes. And by March, by the end of March, when we have uploaded the new content, that's roughly 120 to 130 hours already. So now we're thinking, what's new that 9.09er is going to offer this April? Well, Sir Brian told me that recently his writing program attendees requested for a 3-day speaking program. Well, you are our boss. We're going to give that to you this coming April. So we're always thinking of something new. New innovation, new offer for the benefit of our reviewees without charging extra. What else do we have here? Okay, by the way, tomorrow we're going to shoot new content for our YouTube channel. So, number 1 is how to pass UK NMC CBT. Watch out for that when it's uploaded to our YouTube channel this month. Number 2, there's how to pass your OSCE. So what is OSCE? Objective Structured Clinical Examination. Number 3, we're also going to shoot how to pass TOEFL or Test of English as a foreign language. So every week, we upload new content. What else? Towards the end of our Facebook Live session for tonight, we're going to announce the lucky winner for our February promos. I hope that you're going to stay with us all the way until the end of our Facebook Live session for the announcement of the winner. And then, this coming March, 9.09er is about to turn 14 years old. We've been in the industry in the last 14 years as I opened Niner in 2007. And what's in store for you this month of March? For every person you refer to 9.09er, we're going to give you a referral incentive of 500 pesos. So the person who is going to refer the most number of enrollees until the end of the month, March 31, we're going to give cash price of 11,300 pesos, which is, by the way, the equivalent of the IELTS examination fee. What else? Okay, before we proceed to the next part, perhaps let me call Sir Philip to join us here for tonight. Let me just look at, okay, the phone. We have 540 live viewers so far. So an introductory word from Sir Philip.
Good evening, guys. Welcome to Niner's free IELTS and OET Speaking Masterclass. As always, it's a pleasure to be able to work with you, to be able to prepare well for your exams. So we're here in order for you guys to have a very good idea of what to expect, not only in the exam, but also what comes after it. We do our best, we move heaven and earth in order to provide you with the resources, with the input and the motivation in order for you to be able to do your best. We look forward to spending time with you tonight in order for us to have a solid understanding of what to expect for the speaking test. Isn't that right, Sir Irvin?
Yes, so now, let's take a look at the attendees for tonight. Will you please inform us where you guys are from? So, good evening, Philippines. Good afternoon, Middle East. Maayong adlaw sa tanan ako mga kaigsuonan sa Visayas and Mindanao. Let's see where you guys are from as I greet you. Okay, so we have Marilu from Quezon City, Michelle from Dumaguete, Arlene De Leon, Bulacan, Kim Lim, Saudi Arabia, Alan Lucero, Baguio, Agnes, Riyadh, KSA. Who else? We have Precious from Dagupan, Pangasinan. Cristel Galieto from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Hi, Jolly from Dubai. And then Lizelle, watching from Singapore. Angeli from Saudi. Lance from Pasig. Asa naman ang mga taga Mindanao diha? We have Baguio, Riyadh. Hi, Ina. Regards to Mike. We miss you over there in the United Kingdom. There you go. Helric is watching from Davao.
Hi, Helric.
Bulacan, Cavite, London, Dubai. So, while waiting for the others, we still have 5 more minutes to wait for the others. Guys, let us just announce the following events. So, March 6, IDP Education Pty Limited is going to conduct a free IELTS pre-test for our reviewees. So it's a simulation of the actual examination. You'll be given individual headsets which are used in the actual examination. There are only 30 slots. So if you'd like to have your slot reserved, please don't forget to message us on Facebook or to send us an email, training@nineronlinereview.com, or to message Miss Jenna. 0917-809-3392. And then, Sir Philip, would you like to promote Sir Brian's free orientation?
Sir Brian Martin Shawson shall be having a free orientation this March 6, Saturday. This is for you guys who have no idea really what to expect for the different kinds of exams. Sir Brian would be able to provide a very thorough overview of what the different tests are like, what their similarities and differences are. It's a good investment of your time.
And then March 7, well, if you've noticed, we've done a series of free free sessions this February. We started with a free listening masterclass for IELTS and OET. Free reading masterclass 2 weeks ago. Tonight, this is the free IELTS and OET speaking masterclass. So next week, same time, Sunday, that's March 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. writing masterclass to complete the 4 subtests in IELTS and OET. Then, we have a series of webinars sponsored by IDP Education Pty Limited. In fact, there are 5 of them. So, 2 writing workshops and then 3 listening, reading, and speaking workshops. So, for the listening, reading, and writing workshop, there are actually 2 time slots. There's 1 to 4 p.m. There's 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Now, for the speaking workshop, there are also 2 time slots, 1 to 4 p.m. and then 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. for the benefit of our reviewees. So all you have to do is to message us on Facebook so that you would know the schedule this March. What else do we have? The exclusive examinations for British Council and IDP. So we're going to conduct in collaboration with IDP and British Council, exclusive exams for our reviewees, not just in Metro Manila, but in 15 key cities nationwide. Let me just take a look at these 15 key cities. Okay, there you go. So, computer-delivered academic and general training IELTS in Ortigas, Cebu, and Baguio. That's March 5, March 12, March 19, March 26. Those are the schedules of our computer-delivered exclusive exams. For paper-based academic and general training IELTS, March 13, will you please inform our audience and our subscribers the venues for the paper-based exclusive exam?
That would be Quezon City, Dagupan, Pampanga, Tagaytay, Legazpi, Bohol, as well as Cebu. So if you're located in any of these cities on March 13, there is going to be a paper-based academic and general training IELTS exclusive exam.
Okay, so people might want to ask, so where in Pampanga? They usually pick Clark. What about Bohol? It's usually Tagbilaran. March 27, we also have paper-based exclusive exams in cooperation with IDP Philippines. Sir Philip, they are?
Pasig, Davao, Baguio, Cabanatuan, Lipa, Iloilo, as well as Rojas.
Rojas City, that's Region 6. So guys, I guess 15 minutes introduction is enough. Now, we go to the reason why we are here for tonight, the masterclass. So we begin with Sir Philip discussing a bit of OET, the format of OET speaking test. Then later, I'm going to join him for the format of IELTS speaking test. Okay? Sir Philip, the floor is yours for OET speaking.
Thank you, Sir Irvin. When it comes to the OET, the Occupational English Test, the speaking exam, there are 4 things that happen. The first thing that happens in the test is chit-chat. You get to speak with your interlocutor for around 2 to 3 minutes. This person who you're going to be speaking with will ask you personal questions such as, what's your work, why did you take the exam, etc. This part is not graded, but rather it's a way for you and the interlocutor to get used to each other, get used to each other's voices, maybe relieve your anxiety. After all, the OET is an English exam, not an emotional stability exam. It's understandable for you to be anxious and to be a little bit maybe rattled. And OET doesn't want that. OET wants to make sure that the language that you're going to be assessed on is the language that you normally would produce if you're not that rattled. So there's that introductory phase at the beginning. But after that, the real work begins. You're supposed to have 2 role plays, role play 1 and role play 2, where you take on the role of your profession. So that means if you're a doctor, you take the role of doctor. If you're a pharmacist, you take the role of pharmacist. If you're a nurse, you take the role of a nurse. And you are going to be interacting with a layperson, sometimes a patient, sometimes perhaps a relative. And then you are going to be given 3 minutes to prepare. You will be given a role play card. It's a piece of paper. It's laminated. It presents three kinds of information. First, the location. Where are you? Where does the conversation take place? Are you guys in the community center? Are you guys in the hospital? Is this a home visit? What's the location? The second thing that is given to you would be the situation. Why are you having this conversation in the first place? What do you know so far regarding the situation? Is this person you're speaking with somebody who is already terminal and maybe is a little bit withdrawn and doesn't want to talk to you anymore? Is this somebody who's hostile because his call bell hasn't been answered because you've been busy coding someone else? And the third thing that you're given are tasks. These are a series of tasks that you're supposed to do in order for the conversation to take place. So you have two opportunities, roleplay 1 and roleplay 2, each of equal weight, where you get to demonstrate how to communicate in a therapeutic and effective way, whatever the situation is. The fourth thing that happens is a 30-second recorder playback. Of course, what is not documented did not happen. So it is important for the test providers to have a record of what actually occurred. So there will be a recorder that would take note of what happened. And before you leave, this recorder will be played for 30 seconds to make sure that there is a valid and understandable record of your performance there. Sometimes your voice is muffled because, of course, it is a time of pandemic. You are going to be wearing masks and face shields throughout the interaction. So it's important for you to project well so that your voice can be heard in the recorder. So those are the four things that happen in OET speaking: the 2 to 3 minute introduction, the 2 role plays, and the 30-second recorder playback. When it comes to the IELTS, though, I believe it's quite different. Isn't that right, Sir Irvin?
Because it's my turn to talk about IELTS. First things first, let's take a look at the average of the Filipinos in the speaking subtest. Definitely, we're going to divide this into 2, academic and general training. So, for academic speaking, the national average is 6.8. I am 100% sure that majority of you need 7.0 in speaking. So, what does this mean? Less than 50% of the Philippine population get the required band score in speaking. Now, you're going to tell yourself, at least I have roughly 50% chance of making it in the examination. However, I want you to know that this examination is costly. It's 11,300 pesos. Easily wasted in what? 4 hours? 3 hours? If you've noticed, 11,300 is already the salary of certain Filipinos in 1 month. Therefore, if you want to take the examination, make sure that you're going to pass. Because I tell you, if you don't make it in the examination, it's not just about the money. It's about what? Lowered self-esteem, lowered self-confidence, self-pity, anxiety, burden, frustration, trauma, stress, depression, longer time to stay in the Philippines or wherever you are. That is why our goal here, if this is not your first IELTS, we will do everything to make sure that this is your last attempt. OET, on the other hand, is more expensive, 587 Australian dollars. And if you do the mathematics, if you look at the exchange rate, Google is not necessarily the one which is used as the basis. It's the exchange rate of the credit card companies. That's why recently when we had review, we subbooked for the examination that's more than 22,000 pesos. And obviously, you don't want to repeat the examination and spend another 22,000 pesos. So when you register for the exam, make sure that you are provided with the arsenal, the weaponry that will make you pass the examination. So IELTS Academic, 6.8 is the national average. What about IELTS General Training? The national average is 6.3. So now you have an idea of the performance. What kind of grade does an average Filipino get in the examination? Now we move on to the format. Speaking is the only subtest in the IELTS that is not conducted together with the written exams. And you're going to ask, what is the explanation? Well, apparently, everyone gets to listen, read, and write all at the same time. But for sure, not everyone gets to talk all at the same time. That is why there is a specific schedule for each test taker in the speaking component. Now you're going to ask, when is the speaking subtest? Well, we divide this into two, paper-based IELTS and computer-delivered IELTS. If you are going to take computer-delivered IELTS, the promise of IDP and British Council, you get to finish all the 4 subtests in 1 day. So how does this work, guys? If you look at the schedule, the available computer-delivered written exams, 9 to 12 in the morning, 1 to 4 in the afternoon. So what's their promise? You get to finish all the 4 subtests in 1 day. Now, how does this work? If you choose the morning session for the written exams, definitely you're going to have the speaking subtest in the afternoon. If you choose the afternoon session for the written exams, definitely you're going to have the speaking subtest in the morning. Now, why is it that computer-delivered IELTS is ideal for those people who are working? Because when you're going to file for a leave from work, it's just for 1 day. You get to finish everything in 1 day. But what about the case in paper-based IELTS? The speaking examination may be conducted in one of the 3 days. The day before the exam, it might be on the day of your examination or the day after the examination, depending on the number of candidates taking the test. So when will you find out the specific schedule for your speaking examination? You have to wait for the confirmation or the email if you're taking the examination in IDP. Usually, they email you 5 days before the written exams. However, if you're taking the test in the British Council, Sir Philip and I recently joined the seminar that was conducted by Miss Jessica de la Cruz and Miss Jelly Evangelista of British Council. And we found out that if you're going to take the examination in British Council, Sir Philip, what is the instruction of Miss Jack and Miss Jelly?
You would be allowed to select the time that you will be taking the exam. A great convenience that hopefully you would be able to take advantage of, because this gives you greater control on how much time you have after the written test or before the written test that you take your speaking. Some people would be advantaged if they are given just a short amount of time between these tests because they can get it over and done with. Their anxiety doesn't get a chance to grow. On the other hand, some people work well if they are given time to maybe sleep, have a massage, or eat between these tests. A great advantage of booking the test with British Council.
Okay, so just to give you an idea, when is the best or most ideal time to register for the examination? Well, the deadline, up to 4 days before the exam. Still, there might be available slots. It's just that if you want to pick the best schedule for the speaking subtest, the recommendation is for you to book at least 2 weeks or at least 3 weeks in advance. FYI, speaking venue is not always the same as the venue of the written exam. So please be mindful that you may need to travel from one hotel to another. That's why here I am telling you, the earlier you register for the examination, the better. So that you get to calculate the time that you have to allot in traveling from one hotel to another, as written exams and speaking subtests are not always conducted in the same venue. FYI, this is applicable worldwide. So don't think that we're just talking about the Philippines here. This is applicable worldwide. What about the schedule of the speaking test? The earliest possible schedule for speaking, 8 a.m. local time, wherever you are. What about the last possible slot, 9:40 to 10 p.m. So in the event that you receive a phone call, say for instance, informing you that your speaking is scheduled at 9:40 p.m., you might correct the person you're talking to over the phone, and you might tell this person, "Excuse me, do you mean 9:40 in the morning?" No, that is really the last speaking test for the day, 9:40 to 10 p.m. So make sure that when you receive the email or the call, you're able to take note. Is it AM or PM? So we've mentioned the possible schedule of the speaking subtest. What about in OET? Sir Philip, kindly inform our audience, our subscribers, when is the speaking subtest for OET?
In the Philippines, it's in the same day, most of the time. Because if the written tests are scheduled in the morning, then just like in the IELTS, the speaking test is in the afternoon. However, there are some circumstances, especially because of the pandemic, in which hotels are forced to not accommodate as much as their capacity allows, in which the venue would not be able to accommodate all of the students in the same day. Therefore, you may have to take your speaking test a day before or a day after. Similar to the IELTS, you will be informed days ahead of time which it is, and therefore the earlier that you book your test, the better.
So, Sir Philip earlier gave you an idea of the format in OET speaking. Now it's my turn to talk about the speaking subtest in the IELTS. So IELTS speaking is divided into 3 tasks. Task 1, introduction and interview, that would last for about 5 minutes. So expect that in task 1, most of the questions are personal. You're familiar with these questions. That is why there is no preparation time in task 1. So the moment the examiner asks, you have to open your mouth and start talking. Class, I noticed that in task 1, the shorter your answers are, the more questions are asked. And the longer your answers are, the fewer questions your examiner is likely to ask. So if this is the case, I'm 100% certain that for most candidates, it is more manageable to make one answer long than to think of a new answer every time. This is why we encourage you to provide as many details as you can to make your response longer. Always remember, if you do not talk as much, there is nothing to assess. But if you talk, there's more for the examiner to use as basis in evaluating your performance. So we encourage everyone to be talkative and provide as many details in the first task. So that lasts for about 5 minutes, no preparation time. What about speaking task 2? We call this individual long term. The examiner is going to give you a task card that contains a general question. Say for instance, tell me something about an organization based in your neighborhood, or tell me something about an incident wherein you came in late, or tell me something about a happy couple whom you know. So in IELTS, it could be anything under the sun. That's the case in speaking tasks. So your examiner is going to give you a task card plus a ball pen or pencil plus scratch paper. What for? Because the examiner will allow you to prepare for 1 minute. You can use this outline as your guide while you're talking later on. So after 1 minute preparation time, your examiner will give you minimum of 1 minute for your speech and maximum of 2 minutes. I would like to remind you, 1 minute is the minimum. So you have to make sure that you reach this minimum, because if not, there's going to be a penalty. Your examiner is going to deduct certain points just because you have not reached the minimum. But what about the maximum? 2 minutes. That is your goal. That's the finish line. However, I just want to remind you, the moment you reach the 2nd minute and the examiner shows you certain gestures, say for instance, like this or this one, you have to stop talking. Congratulations, you reached the finish line. So task 2 is uninterrupted. The examiner cannot butt in while you are talking. This case is entirely different in task 1 and task 3, because in task 1 and task 3, the examiner can interfere, can interrupt without you finishing your responses. You see, I've been doing this in the last 15 years of my life, as I started teaching IELTS in May of 2006 and opened Niner in 2007. So our reviewees message us, and you'll notice that we're very responsive. Speaking of responsive, those who are messaging our Facebook account right now, if you are surprised that no one's responding you, that's because the person responding to the message is still talking, okay? So I will respond to the messages right after this one. Anyway, going back to the point. Some of them message us and tell us, "Sir, why is it that my examiner did not allow me to finish my answers?" Well, I've noticed there are examiners who won't allow you to finish your response. The others frequently butt in or interrupt after 4 sentences of your response. That's why if I were you, go direct to the point in the first 4 sentences, and that's when you provide the other details later on. Now, how is task 1 different from task 3? Task 1 and task 3, both of them, roughly 5 minutes. Task 1 and task 3, no preparation time. So it's only task 2 that will allow you to prepare for your answer. But how is task 1 different from task 3? Task 1 questions, mostly personal. But task 3 questions are follow-up questions to whatever answers you have given in task 2. That is why, if I were you, avoid complicated responses in task 2 if you don't want to invite even more complex follow-up questions in task 3. Keep it simple. Why? Because the speaking subtest is not a test of your what? Your ability to impress the examiner. IELTS is not like that. What is IELTS? Your ability to communicate, to get your point across. So, when you converse with your brother, when you talk to your best friend, or when you talk to your parents, you're not there to impress them, right? You are there to tell a story. And that's exactly what examiners are assessing in the speaking subtest. Your ability to converse casually. That's why we want you to express, not to impress. So that's the format of the speaking subtest that lasts for about 11 to 14 minutes. Sir Philip, what about in OET? How long is the typical speaking subtest? And are there certain interlocutors who deviate from the usual time allotment?
Not really. They're very strict when it comes to the timing. As I mentioned earlier, the chit-chat that happens at the beginning lasts 1 to 2 minutes. In the 2 role plays, you will always be given 3 minutes to prepare, always given 5 minutes to have this conversation. So simple mathematics, 8 plus 8 is 16, plus maybe 2 minutes for the chit-chat, that's 18 minutes, and then maybe 2 minutes for the introduction and the wrap-up. So you're over and done with in 20 minutes, always. Now there is less discretion for the interlocutor to deviate from the script, because unlike in the IELTS, in which the examiner is the one that can ask any question under the sun, in the OET, there is a script that is dependent on you, the candidate, and the interlocutor following it. As we discussed earlier in the role play card that you will be given, there are going to be tasks that you are supposed to perform and the order in which you're supposed to perform them. And in order for you to perform these tasks, you are dependent on the interlocutor to do his part as well. And similarly, he is dependent on you performing your tasks. So, for example, if it's your job to ask about dialysis, and then what's supposed to happen next is he's supposed to express fear or maybe hesitation about the procedure, because the next task that you have is to reassure him. So there's interdependence between you and the interlocutor. It is a script. So that's one of the main differences between the OET speaking and the IELTS speaking.
Okay, let me just check. Okay, for the benefit of the 648 live viewers watching this one, in IELTS speaking, it's not always the case. Why? 11 to 14 minutes, that's the average. It's just that in my last 15 years of teaching IELTS, almost half of my life I've devoted to this examination. Some of our reviewees messaged us and told us, "Sir, my speaking exam ended in 8 minutes." Or some reviewees also told me, "Sir, you know what? I had my interview for 20 minutes. Now let me remind you, the length or the duration of the speaking subtest is not the basis for you to pass or fail the examination. Now I tell you, I'd rather be grilled for 20 minutes and be given a 9 in speaking. Remember, if your examination ended in 8 minutes, it's not a guarantee that you made it or you failed. Or even if the examiner consumed the entire time, 20 minutes for the speaking subtest, it's also not a guarantee that you're going to get the required band score. So 11 to 14 minutes, that's the average. But it could be 8 minutes, it could also be 20 minutes. Now you're going to ask, 11 to 14 minutes. So how many questions are there? Let me tell you what I've experienced when I took the test. So for the record, I took the IELTS twice, one academic and one general training, one in British Council and one in IDP. For both instances, I was assigned to seasoned examiners. So later on, I'm going to compare seasoned versus scripted examiners. So my examiners, as I've noticed, asked me 3 topics each in task 1. 3 questions per topic. So if you do the math, 3 times 3, a total of 9 questions for task 1 alone. My first examiner asked me questions related to house, food, and art. Now, for task 2, that's 1 general question, that's your task card. Now, what about task 3? Minimum of 5 follow-up questions. If you do the math, 9 plus 1 plus 5, minimum of 15 questions in the entire speaking exam. It's just that there are examiners who ask more than 20 questions in the speaking test. Well, now, as I've promised, I'm going to differentiate scripted examiners from seasoned examiners. Well, there are 35 IELTS examiners in the Philippines, and I've encountered 20 of them, or I've met 20 of them in person. But how? I've always attended writing workshops and speaking workshops conducted by British Council and IDP. And before ECQ, before the pandemic, they're always conducted live, face-to-face interaction. That's why I've met these examiners. So from Examiner A all the way to Examiner Z, I know them by heart as I have encountered most of them. From A, Astillero Iris, one of my favorite examiners, all the way to letter Z, Zerkwitz Philip, also one of the foreigner examiners. Now, speaking of these examiners, I promise that I'm going to compare scripted and seasoned examiners. But Sir Philip, here is a question that people usually ask. And I need you to be all ears on this one. What is it that people ask? Sir, is it true that it's easier to pass the speaking subtest once we are assigned to a foreigner or a non-Filipino examiner? Sir Philip, what's your thought? What's your opinion? Your thoughts?
Definitely not. At the end of the day, whether it is easy or hard for you to pass the exam is very much less dependent on the examiner and much more dependent on your preparation for the tests. Whoever you're confronted with, whether it's a foreigner or a fellow Filipino, if you do the work, if you invest the time and the energy and the effort, whoever they throw at you, you'll be able to perform well. I think that is the most important thing to remember when it comes to who your examiner is.
I usually respond to 50 messages per hour. That's why I should know. People usually ask, so sir, out of the 35 examiners in the Philippines, how many are Filipinos? How many are non-Filipinos? But for non-Filipinos, typically they are white. So I told them, well, more than 20 are Filipinos, so less than 15 are foreigners. And here's this Filipino who asked me, so sir, where am I supposed to take the examination if I don't want to be assigned to a Filipino examiner? And then I responded to this student and I said, why don't you take the examination in Zimbabwe? For sure, you won't be assigned to a Filipino examiner. And then the student got mad at me and I told her, well, the fact remains, we are here to prepare you to pass the examination, regardless of the examiner, regardless of the testing center. Because at the end of the day, you cannot pick your examiner. But there's this question. Someone asked me, sir, is it possible to request for a change of examiner? Well, what do you think, Sir Philip? Is it possible for them to request for a change of examiner or interlocutor?
I think only in the circumstance where you have gotten the same examiner in a previous attempt of your exam, because you're not supposed to have the same person judge you a second time around.
Okay? What is it that Sir Philip said? If you are taking the examination for the first time, you cannot choose your examiner. You don't have that right or privilege. However, if circumstances so dictate that this is your second or third attempt in the IELTS, not because you failed, but simply because your first examination expired, then what do? I need you to be early at the examination venue because that's the time when you're going to find out who the examiner is. The moment you recognize that you're assigned to exactly the same examiner, you have to approach the invigilator or the test supervisor and mention this politely. Excuse me, I have taken the exam before. I remember vividly that my first examiner is exactly the same speaking examiner assigned to me now. As someone who paid 11,300 pesos, which is a fortune in the Philippines, I invoke my right to request for a change of examiner. Remember, this is not something that everyone gets to enjoy, only those who have taken the examination before. Remember, if you arrive right on time, you cannot request for a change of examiner anymore, even if this is the same person who interviewed you before. That's why I need you to be early at the examination venue. So, as I was saying earlier, seasoned examiners versus scripted examiners. So the term seasoned, usually these are the examiners who won't allow you to finish your responses. They typically butt in after 3 to 4 sentences of your response, and they shift from one topic to another. Remember when I took the test from house to food to art. And these are examiners who ask follow-up questions depending on your responses. So the more complicated your answer is, you're just inviting even more complex follow-up questions. But what about the scripted examiners? From the term script, these examiners are provided with a script by Cambridge. So it's not IDP, it's not British Council making the test paper or the question, it's Cambridge. So they look at the script and ask questions based on the script. Seasoned examiners usually deviate from the script, but for the scripted examiners, they usually stick to the set of questions provided to them. So now you're going to ask, what are the chances that I will be assigned to a seasoned or a scripted examiner? In the Republic of the Philippines, we have 35 examiners, right? Based on my research. So, I am not an English major, I am not a nurse by profession, but I finished a degree in research from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. So, using my research skills, that's when, in the last 14 or 15 years of teaching IELTS, I was able to determine that we have roughly 27 seasoned examiners in the Philippines and 8 scripted examiners in the Philippines. So that means to say there is a higher probability that in the actual examination, you will be assigned to a seasoned examiner. That's why when our coaches conduct the one-on-one tutorial every single day from Monday to Sunday from 8 a.m. all the way to 5 p.m. Rather 5 a.m. That's 21 hours of coaching every day. Most of them usually follow the mode of questioning of the seasoned examiners. So what do seasoned examiners do? They won't allow you to finish your answers. They butt in from time to time. They shift from one topic to another, and their questions are usually dependent on your questions. So, some of you might be doing self-review. The others might be enrolled in a review center that's tied up with your recruitment agency. But I hope that I was able to share something new for tonight, like the national average of 6.8 in academic, 6.3 for general training module, or that there are 35 examiners in the Philippines, 20 more than 20 Filipinos, less than 15 foreigners. At the same time, 27 seasoned, 8 scripted. All these and more you're going to find out when you attend the classes that we conduct at 9.09er. So, if you've noticed, when we talk, we're not looking at any script or something. We're not using any PowerPoint presentation. We just open our mouth. Why? This is what familiarity does. And mind you, even if we're sleeping and even if we're dreaming, we both guess we can still teach. That's because of the length of the experience, the expertise that we have related to this examination. So as I was saying, I need you to be prepared for seasoned examiners because there's a higher probability that you'll be assigned to them in the actual exam. Now, what about the overseas reviewees? They ask me, sir, what about in Saudi Arabia? How many seasoned examiners or how many scripted examiners are there? And I respond to them in Tagalog by saying, sir, ma'am, may hangganan din po ang aking kapangyarihan. It's limited to the Philippine area of responsibility. So, if it goes out of par or Philippine area of responsibility, I do not know who the examiners are. I am certain they also have scripted and seasoned examiners over there. But remember, it's best that you are prepared for the examination and not the examiner. Okay? So, this is a question typically asked, not just among Niner reviewees, but also in Facebook groups. So, I'm a member of Lefora, I'm a member of Pinoy UK Nurses, I'm a member of Pinoy students in Australia, international students in Canada, and the question that people always ask, so, sir, which one do you recommend? Is it IDP or British Council? Well, for the record, I have my own explanation, but what about Sir Philip right here? What can you say? What are the factors that they have to consider before they decide which testing center should they pick for IELTS and OET?
Location. If you are nearer the testing centers for British Council, go to the British Council. If you're nearer the test locations for IDP, go to IDP. I think it's as simple as that, because at the end of the day, the examiners that you are going to be getting would be some of them would be seasoned and some of them would be scripted, and there is a mix of both in both IDP and British Council. The venues that they use, the hotels, they're all very conducive to you performing in the speaking test. So there is no actual practical functional difference between them except for location. Did I get that right, Sir Irvin?
Yes. I'm going to share more later on, but what about OET? Because I understand there are certain places where there is only one testing center for OET. Say, for instance, in Mindanao, the only testing center for OET is UTP based in Davao. In Iloilo, there's Kaplan. In Baguio, there's ACE Testing Hub. But what about Cebu and Metro Manila? There's ACE Testing Hub and there's Kaplan as well. So, Sir Philip, would you like to share your thoughts to our OET candidates who are about to take the examination? By the way, Sir Philip took the examination twice, okay? Version 1.0 and version 2.0 of OET, and in both attempts, he got the perfect A in speaking. So, first attempt, he took it in Kaplan. Second attempt, ACE Testing Hub. So, Sir Philip, would you like to share to our candidates the typical venues of OET speaking?
Well, as Sir Irvin just said, I did take the exam, at least in the Philippines, first in Kaplan and second in ACE. I would prefer to focus the discussion on my experience with ACE Testing Hub. The experience there, in my opinion, was superior. I was in a quiet room in a hotel in Holiday Inn, which is right behind Glorieta, in the Greenbelt area.
One of those four,
one
of those five glorietas.
One of those five glorietas. Yeah, I know, right? It was really posh. It was really amazing. Even if I whispered, I would be able to be heard by the interlocutor. And this really made all the difference because, of course, your surroundings, how comfortable you feel, and how confident you are that no matter how maybe meek your voice is or how soft-spoken you are, that you will be heard, not only by the interlocutor, but more importantly, by the recorder, and therefore your examiners in Australia. Well, this really it makes a difference. So if you have the choice, as Sir Irvin mentioned, in Cebu as well as in Metro Manila, between ACE and Kaplan, I strongly recommend that you go for ACE Testing Hub. In Makati, here in Manila, and in Cebu, in one of those nice hotels as well.
Okay, so what about IELTS? You see, I'm friends with both British Council and IDP. So for IDP, Miss Hannah is a country examinations manager and we text each other, if not on a daily basis, every other day. For British Council, my contact person is Miss Jessica de la Cruz and she is the country exams relationship account manager, something like that. I know her designation is 5 words. What is it that I'd like to tell you guys? These two testing centers have their own offers, their own benefits. So, this is what I want you to do before you decide which testing center to pick for your examination. You check the test dates of British Council and IDP. You check the venues. From there, you decide which of the two offers a test venue which is more accessible for you, and number 2, which of the two offers a more convenient test schedule. After that, you pick the examination center that will make it easier for you to take the examination. Remember, there are certain locations where only IDP conducts the exam. There are also certain locations where only British Council conducts the examination. This is applicable worldwide, guys, not just in the Philippines. I understand there are certain parts in Middle East where there is no IDP, or certain parts where there is no British Council, or if both of them are present, they don't have exactly the same venues and test dates. Okay? So now, we're done with the format of the examination, the time allotment. This time, we move to the most important part of the discussion. What are the criteria that examiners use in assessing your performance? Then, what are the usual problems? Plus, the tips that 9.09er lecturers recommend. Tips not just on how to get 7, but how to get the perfect grade in the examination. Now, you guys might be thinking, so what are the chances that you guys are credible speakers on how to get a 9 in the examination? What's common for both of us? We got a 9 in the speaking subtest together with Sir Brian, the head of our online team. FYI, we are not boastful, we are not narcissistic, but we just want you to know that the people talking teaching at 9.09er are reliable and credible. If this is not the IELTS that we're talking about, then we're not going to talk about our scores. So, let's begin with the IELTS. There are 4 criteria. 2 of them assess your delivery, whereas 2 of them assess your English. So, let's begin with the 2 criteria. The first 2 criteria assessed exclusively in the speaking subtest. There's fluency. The second one, pronunciation. I understand, Sir Philip, that these 2 are also assessed in OET, right?
Exactly. In
Okay.
the OET, the only difference is it's called fluency and intelligibility, which is exactly the same as pronunciation.
Okay, so as I'm looking at my phone, it says 7:54.
Oh.
I'm sure, guys,
Oh.
you don't mind if we extend, right? Because we are here to make it comprehensive. So some people are asking, do you offer intensive classes? And I told them all our classes are intensive, extensive, comprehensive, as intense as you want it to be. We're taking our time. We're not in a rush. If we finish at 8:30, we don't mind. We've eaten dinner already. If we finish at 9 p.m., go ahead, no problem, because we are going to entertain your questions later, but not now. Let's go back to fluency. So in IELTS, the first criterion is known as fluency, spontaneity, and coherence. This criterion assesses your ability to talk in a natural, free-flowing, and continuous manner. But I hope that you pay attention to the word coherence as well. It is not enough that you are talkative. Make sure you make sense and your thoughts are organized. Why? IELTS examiners notice that most of the candidates think of this at the back of their mind. Bahala na. Salita na lang ako ng salita. Pahahabain ko lang ng pahahabain to, bahala na. It does not work that way. It has to be organized. You need to what? Follow a smooth flow from beginning to end. It has to be understandable. At the same time, there are candidates who are overly talkative but are not responsive to the question. I learned about this in 2017, December 1 to 5 in Shanghai, where I was sent as the only representative of the Philippines to the International English Language Conference. And during that time, I met 2 big bosses of IELTS in Asia. Hello, Dr. Victoria Clark, and hello, Dr. Joanna Motoram. Well, they have access to the statistics. And what is it that they've noticed? Filipinos don't necessarily fail in IELTS speaking because of grammar and vocabulary. But you know what? Filipinos usually don't make it because of the first criterion, which is fluency and coherence. We are talkative, but there is a tendency for Filipinos not to be responsive to the question. Say, for instance, Sir Philip, will you just throw me literally any question? And then I'll give them an idea how most Filipinos respond in the speaking subtest. Just throw me any question.
Certainly. Irvin, what sacrifice have you made that you regret?
Well, there's this sacrifice that I made when I was in college. That was when I decided to transfer to Quezon City because I'm originally from Davao and then I transferred to Quezon City. You know what? Quezon City is a lovely place and it's considered the biggest city in Metro Manila. Oh, you know what? Metro Manila is one of the most populous districts in the entire Philippines. Philippines, by the way, is located in Southeast Asia, and guess what? It's one of the most populous countries in the world. The world right now is experiencing this pandemic. The last time there was a pandemic was in 1920. During that time, it was flu. No one predicted that it will take 100 years for another pandemic to happen. Now, speaking of pandemic, I've heard recently that vaccines have been vaccines are now available in the market. It's just that there are a lot of adverse effects. And speaking of adverse effects, I hope that it will relate back to the question, which is the sacrifice. So, guys, what can you say about that performance? Am I talkative? Was I talkative when I responded to Sir Philip's question? Now, did I answer the question? That's the point. It's not enough that you open your mouth. So, one of my idols, one of my favorite examiners, hi, Professor Rosella Bambi Torrecampo of UP Diliman. She's really one of my favorite mentors in IELTS. One of the instances when we met, because we met not just once, I asked her, so Professor Torrecampo, what's the difference between 7 and 9? And here's what she said. In the Philippines, where English is not a foreign language anymore, it's considered first language to a lot of Filipinos because we can communicate well in English. There is a very thin line that separates 7 and 9. Because a lot of Filipinos have above average English. Now, what is it that examiners use in determining whether you're going to get just the average score or the perfect score? It's what? Intelligence. The quality of your answer. Because this is the lesson I've learned from her. A lot of people have correct English, but not everyone sounds smart when talking in English. Blessed are those who display intelligence, for they will get 9.0 in the speaking subtest. So class, it's not big words that will make you get 9.0 in speaking. You know what? Recently, there's this reviewee for one-on-one coaching. Don't worry, I won't mention the name, okay? We are here not to criticize. We are here to make it the point that the common misconceptions and the mistakes are what? Corrected prior to the examination. So I asked the reviewee, so tell me something about your favorite food. The reviewee responded, you know what? In this neoteric era, and I was like, I was just asking about your favorite food, and why are you telling me something about neoteric era? And I was like, what is neoteric?
What is neoteric?
Tama ba yung dinig ko? Baka erotic yung dinig ko. Point being, even if you don't mention neoteric, you will get 9 in the speaking subtest for as long as you are able to communicate your thoughts and perform well in the 4 criteria. So there's fluency, there's pronunciation, there's vocabulary, and grammar. Another reviewee, I asked, okay, so tell me something about this and that. And she responded by saying, you know what, I'm burning the midnight oil, and it actually cost me my arm and my leg, and it was a whale of a time. You don't use all those 3 in one sentence. Do you talk like that to your mother? Do you talk like that to your best friend? No. When you talk to people you're familiar with, you use simple language that's easily understood. The point is you have to be understood by the person you are talking to. So going back to fluency, make sure that before you open your mouth, ask yourself, am I answering the question? You always go back to the question. So remember, for the first criterion, examiners expect you to be detailed, to be talkative, but not necessarily fast. So this is the concern of majority of the Filipinos. They're thinking, fluency means speed. That's why I have to talk fast. No, it's not like that. Even if you don't talk fast, you can probably get 9 in fluency. A lot of my reviewees ask me, sir, what if I have ums? Will this mean I will automatically fail in the exam once I have ums? Not necessarily. Remember, what are ums? Ums are fillers. You're still thinking of the right word. You're still thinking of the response. Now, this is what happens. The mind is the one thinking of the answer. The mouth is the one delivering the answer. So when you speak too fast, your mouth goes ahead of your brain in thinking of what you're going to say, such that in the end, you get to have so many ums along the way. Now, what are our recommendations for the first criterion? Number 1, provide as many details as you can to make the answer long. But number 2, make sure that you always go back to the question. You avoid off-topic responses. Number 3, your thoughts must be organized. And number 4, you don't have to talk fast. That's the case in IELTS fluency. What about OET fluency, Sir Philip?
More or less the same. The criteria that the OET uses in order to assess your fluency are continuity, your ability to avoid unnecessary pauses in your speech, as well as your rate, literally your number of words per minute. Because if you're not very fluent in the language, then necessarily your rate would be slow all the time, whether or not this is appropriate. Now, this is important to remember that, just as Sir Irvin said, that you don't need to talk fast in order for you to score well in fluency. Well, this is doubly true in the OET, precisely because the situation in which you have to talk in the OET is meant to be a professional and a layperson. It happens in the context of that professional relationship. Your job is not just to talk, but very importantly also to listen. You must give the patient or the layperson the chance to express himself. So if you just keep talking, you explain the entire pathophysiology of like diabetes or like neuropathy, etc. You give the entire MIMS entry of like metformin or something, and then the poor layperson just is sitting there listening to you talk, whether or not this is something that's important to him. Instead of you scoring well, your score goes down. So we discussed this in greater detail in class, of course, but what is important for you to remember at this stage is that it is important for you to talk, it is important for you to speak continuously, but it is equally important for you to know when to keep quiet. Because when you keep quiet, you give space for the layperson to express his thoughts, his concerns, which you are supposed to be soliciting and responding to. This is what patient-centered communication sounds like. Unlike in the IELTS, in which you are merely responding to the questions of the examiner, and he's the one throwing questions all the time. Here in the OET, you yourself are supposed to be asking questions too, and this means paying attention to the responses. You cannot just keep talking and talking and talking, but rather you must listen to the layperson. This means sometimes pausing and giving space for the layperson to think and to ask his questions. And that is one of the main differences between the fluency in OET and the IELTS. I believe the next criterion is pronunciation, Sir Irvin?
That's right. So in IELTS, we call this pronunciation and delivery in general. So some of our reviewees ask, so sir, what's the difference between pronunciation and accent? Pronunciation pertains to clarity of words as you talk, while accent pertains to the manner of delivery, which is usually affected by your native tongue or your regional orientation. Well, let's begin with accent. Guys, do you think accent matters in the speaking subtest? So think about it. Does accent matter? Yes or no? Well, this is how 9.09 responds to this question. Number 1, you are not required to have the Native American, British, or Australian accent. Sir Philip and I don't sound like Brits or Aussies, but we got the perfect grade in speaking. That's because we speak clearly.
Yes.
So, native accent is not required. What about number 2? What is it that you're required to do to drop the local accent? So this is the goal of every IELTS candidate. When the examiner closes his or her eyes, the examiner must not recognize that the person talking is Filipino, because you don't have the nuances of a typical Filipino while speaking in English. Well, I'm so happy that we have a lot of candidates today, reviewees and non-reviewees alike, who are able to pronounce well. It's just that it's also unfortunate that there are Filipinos who are said to have some speech defects. So if you get what I'm saying, there's a common interchange of F and P, B and V, D and TH. You might want to ask, why is this the case? If you review the original Filipino alphabet, abacada, no F, no V, no TH sounds. When we were introduced to English, that's when there's F, V, and TH. That's why some of us are confused. So, in Tagalog, it's just P, B, and D. But in English, there's F, V, and TH. Now, what is the reason why some people are not able to pronounce clearly? That's because they don't open their mouth as much. Remember, words are just air coming out of your mouth. Try to do this randomly while you're talking. Keep on talking and then all of a sudden, cover your mouth. You will realize there's air coming out of your mouth. You want the air to come out, then you open your mouth. Especially now, in this time of pandemic, all the speaking examinees are required to wear a face mask while you are talking. And then, in some testing centers, there is an acrylic barrier separating the examiner and the candidate. If you are soft-spoken without the face mask, how much more if there is a face mask and there is an acrylic barrier? We want you to practice while you're doing the one-on-one coaching, or when you have a speaking buddy or a speaking partner. It is best that you wear a face mask. Why? Because that's the way it's done in the actual examination. Some of our candidates told us, sir, I had no idea that it's quite difficult to talk with a face mask on because it's as if you're running out of air. Well, what can you say about this, Sir Philip? I heard you talk something about face mask in OET practice tests.
Yes, that's true. That is psychological. A mask does not impair your ability to breathe. That is something that is all in your head. Of course, having said that, if you genuinely think this, then it's going to become true. No? So therefore, it is important for you to realize that just as people can run marathons with a mask, then you can perform for 11 to 15 minutes for that. However, although you can breathe properly, it does muffle sound. As Sir Irvin said, from your mouth to the examiner's ears, or in the case of OET, in the recorder that's between you and the interlocutor, the mask and the face shield is going to be a barrier. So we strongly emphasize that when you practice, please wear the mask, whether with your speaking buddy or with your coach. Wear the mask because you are going to be using the mask come the test. We do not want you to be unpleasantly surprised that you cannot be heard. And unpleasant surprises in the exam are very expensive because they cost so much. So please wear the mask all the time.
What is the ideal delivery in IELTS and OET speaking? Imagine this is not a formal interview. You are not in court interviewed by a lawyer. You are not inside the high school principal's office just because you were caught cutting classes. You're not applying for a job. What are you doing in the speaking subtest? Conversing with the examiner. That's why I find it surreal, I find it absurd that there are certain people in the speaking subtest who responds by talking but looks at the ceiling, looks at the wall. The examiner is not there. The examiner is not there. The examiner is here in front of you. You communicate, and one way of communicating is to build rapport, maintain eye contact. Now, certain candidates are nervous, and they make it a point that the examiner sees that they are nervous. You know what? I've noticed there are only two kinds of candidates in the actual examination. Those who are nervous but keep it to themselves. And number two, those who are nervous and make it more obvious that they are nervous. Why are you nervous? Because your future is at stake here. This will spell the difference between you staying in the Philippines for the rest of your life or going to a first world country and live the dream. That's why most of you are suffocated by the thought that, hey, my future is at stake here. But the moment you think of this as an examination, the more you cannot breathe. You go back to the objective of the speaking subtest, casual conversation. That's why, what's the best way to improve this kind of delivery? By talking in English in a casual conversation. So who are the people that you live with at home? Your family members, then you ask them to talk to you in English. And then you're going to tell me, oh, sir, that's so awkward. We don't usually communicate in English. But the problem is when you go to US, Canada, Ireland, Australia, UK, New Zealand, you'll be talking in English literally every single day. When are you going to practice talking in English? By the time you go there? By the time you arrive? No, it starts as early as now. So I asked Sir Philip, how long did you prepare for the IELTS? And you know what he told me? I started preparing for IELTS since I was 1 year old.
Yeah.
He started thinking, talking, and writing in English. You don't expect miracles to happen overnight. We are lecturers. We are teachers, but we're not magicians. You have to do your part by practicing at home. So, in improving your delivery, I would rather you look at yourself in the mirror. Ask yourself, are you convinced with the reflection that you see? Why? If you cannot convince yourself that you deserve to get at least 7 in the speaking subtest, then what are the chances that you're going to convince other people to give you 7 or 9 in the speaking subtest? It starts from within. When you are confident, everything follows domino effect. You have something to add to delivery?
Oh, definitely. I would just like to build on what Sir Irvin has been saying, that intelligence is not the only variable for success. There are lots of valedictorians and dean's listers who falter when the moment comes for them to step up. So clearly, therefore, that emotions, managing your anxiety, managing your emotions is a critical component of your success. So Sir Irvin was talking about developing confidence in your belief that you deserve this. And at the same time, something that is helpful is immediately before your speaking test, just like immediately before your listening, reading, and writing, it is very useful for you to perform controlled breathing. You inhale for 5 seconds. You exhale for 7 seconds. This shifts your body from a sympathetic nervous response, fight or flight, to a parasympathetic nervous response, rest and digest. This is built into our system. Our genetics are ancient. The circuitry of our body is like that. So therefore, it's best for you to take advantage of this. It is understandable that because your future is on the line for the next 11 to 14 or 15 minutes, that it is going to worry you. The good news is there is anxiety that is good anxiety. It's called eustress. A little anxiety helps you to focus more, to be more alert, to perform your best, performance time. And as long as you're able to tone down, to dial down the anxiety by controlled breathing, by believing that you deserve it, before your exam and the minutes before it, then this is going to serve you very well. In the OET, at least in my experience, you are immediately before your exam, you are on a monoblock chair outside the room where the interlocutor would be, so that when the candidate is finished with the exam, you're immediately there so that you could enter the room, so that the turnover is quick. You get the idea, right? So while you're sitting there, right outside the room, there is nothing for you to cram. There's nothing for you to remember, but rather to control your breathing and to inhale and then exhale and be more mindful of your breath. This would allow you to be able to give your best, and this is something for you to remember. Manage your anxiety and you will be able to unleash your full potential.
I think I need to share this because before I worked with one of the IELTS examiners. If I may share this with you guys, examiners are not robots. They are humans. And humans have the heart. So this is what I've learned from one of the examiners I worked with before. For the first few minutes, the examiners pay attention to your English, because apparently this is an English examination. But after that, if your English is so-so, what are the other factors that they use in convincing them to give you the passing score? How badly do you want to get that passing score in the speaking subtest? Why? Because I've noticed when certain candidates in the speaking subtest are asked, okay, tell me something about this and that, this is how they look like in the speaking subtest. How can you convince the examiner that you deserve at least 7 if you look like a snail? If you look like a turtle in the speaking subtest? You show the examiner, I have nothing against snail and turtle. I'm just giving you an idea. Or you look like a sloth. Okay? You look like a koala. You need to have that game face on. So say for instance, if the examiner asks you a question that totally you're not familiar with, just tell the examiner, You know what, examiner? I am here in front of you not because I want to know if my English is good or not. Because if I just want my English to be assessed, I could have taken a free online examination which tells me my level of proficiency in English. But why am I submitting myself to the rigors of this examination? This is because it's a requirement for me to fulfill the dreams, not just for myself, but for my family members, for the entire family, for their future. I admit I don't know everything, but here I am telling you I want this so badly. So come on, examiner, bring it on. Ask me the next question. I'll prove to you that I deserve to go abroad. Sometimes they are convinced if you show them that you deserve that passing score. They are not robots. They have emotions, and sometimes it's what you need. You get to the heart of the examiner, you capture the emotions of the examiner, and use it to your advantage. If you know that your English is average, then just show the examiner you have what it takes to pass, to ace the speaking subtest. Sir Philip, is there anything else you'd like to add regarding pronunciation?
One last thing. It takes time for pronunciation to change because there is such a thing called muscle memory. As Sir Irvin said, in order for our mouths to produce speech, we have to move our articulators, our teeth, our lips, our tongue, our hard and soft palate, our jaw, and our larynx. Now, muscles, of course, if you make them do the same thing again and again, then the movement becomes automatic. And there are certain sounds that we are much more used to compared to other sounds, like in Tagalog, for example, a, e, I, o, u. However, it takes time for our mouths to produce the sound because these things are not p, but it takes time. So therefore, if I would suggest that pronunciation perhaps should be your least priority, your last priority. Kindly emphasize the other criteria where you can make significant progress and gains in a more limited amount of time. Talk in English first. Just get used to talking in the language, whatever your pronunciation is, or your grammar, or your vocabulary. Because please take note, if you're not talking, you are getting 0 in pronunciation, 0 in grammar, and 0 in lexical resource as well, and vocabulary. So that is the first skill. Pronunciation can wait. Everything else can wait. Just talk in English, and that would be able to give you the most progress in a limited span of time.
Okay, before we go to vocabulary and grammar, I have a final tip related to content. So once again, some examinees told us, "Sir, why is it that I feel intimidated by the examiner? The examiner asked me such complicated questions." You have no idea what complicated questions I got in my task 3. And this is for the record. My examiner in task 3 asked me questions related to biotechnology. And for a research major, a communication research graduate, I haven't had plenty of science subjects in college. So what are the chances that I can launch into a monologue regarding biotechnology? Before I share you my tip, what about Sir Philip? Have you encountered complicated questions in your speaking subtest? Task 1, Task 2, Task 3? Anything you consider remarkable that you were quite shocked?
Not really. I love complex questions. I love asking complex questions in class as well. Although I do recall my speaking examiner, Priscilla Angela Tan Cruz, hi ma'am, did ask me lots of questions, and it was a joy answering them because they provided me with a platform for me to elucidate and articulate all the thoughts and all the varied branches of ideas that I had in my head. And that, in fact, that is why I distinctly recall, and I think you do too, that when she announced to me, "Okay, Philip, the time's up. That's the end of your test." I, who was so enjoying the conversation, I went like, "Huh? That's it?" Yeah? And then she smirks, turns the timer around to me, and says, "Yeah, it's 30 minutes." And I said, "Oh, thank you," because I really wanted to keep talking because the questions that she was asking were complex and allowed me to brandish the insights that I had. I understandably though, this is not the same experience of every candidate when confronted with more complex questions. Wouldn't you say, Sir Irvin?
Sir Brian was asked questions related to archaeology. And I'm like, biotechnology? Archaeology? So, I asked one of the examiners I worked with, and this is what I found out. There are argumentative examiners, debating examiners, as we call them, but don't be overwhelmed, don't be intimidated. In fact, this is what I tell my students, and I'll mention this to everyone, even the non-Niner enrollees who are here to learn. The more the examiner argues with you, the more the examiner loves you. Why? 9.0 in speaking, expert user of English. The ability of the candidate to express himself freely regardless of side, stand, or opinion. So if the examiner asks you difficult questions, that's because the examiner thinks your mental faculties are superior. You can carry out an argumentation or debate. But what's the point of arguing with someone who cannot argue back? So examiners adjust according to your level. So for someone who sounds smart, for someone who displays intelligence, I doubt if the examiner is going to ask questions related to house or food. The examiner knows that you have what it takes to get the highest band score. That's why the examiner starts to ask questions that are more complicated than the rest. So here you are, guys. If you're asked something complicated, this is the golden opportunity for you to show what you've got, to get the highest possible grade in the examination, not by using complicated words, but by sharing your thoughts. Remember, it's intelligence that is the basis of the examiners to give you just the passing score or the perfect score. Do not be intimidated by examiners who argue with you. And sometimes those who argue are the ones who give 9.0 in speaking. In the same way that my beloved examiner, Pamela, you gave me a 9.0 in speaking, and Sir Brian Martin Shawson's examiner, Miss Charette Pagtalunan, gave him a 9.0 in speaking.
Oh, one last thing. The intelligence definitely is something that is very useful to have in the exam, because you would be able to have more thoughts, and if you have the language to express these thoughts, then so much the better for you. It is of course possible for you to have many thoughts and yet be unable to articulate them. So it's a balance of two things. You need to have the ideas in the first place and the language to express them. It's possible you're very good in English, but because you're not listening to the question, or maybe you encounter a topic you've never encountered before, therefore your grade isn't as high as it could be. Alternatively, it's possible that you actually get the question very much. You have so many thoughts, but because you're not so used to the language, what's the English? Anong English nun? So, therefore, it's a holistic approach that you need to be taking as well. And that's why, as Irvin mentioned earlier, the 4 criteria assess on one hand delivery, and on the other hand, the English or mastery of the language.
So what does 9.09er do to enter the picture? So speaking of content, speaking of fluency, we discuss the topics that frequently come out in the examination, the questions that come out regularly, then we ask the students to brainstorm. We don't really spoon feed. Why? I've shared this in the group chat earlier this morning, way back in 2007 when Niner operated as a review center. So our orange book back then had sampled responses in the speaking subtest. And there's this question in the IELTS. Tell me something about your favorite childhood story. Now, my sampled response is 3 Little Pigs. So, there's this examiner. First candidate was asked, okay, tell me something about your favorite childhood story. My favorite childhood story is the 3 Little Pigs. Next candidate. So tell me something about your favorite childhood story. There's this uncommon story when I was young, and it's the story of the 3 Little Pigs. Third candidate. Tell me something about your favorite childhood story. Oh, my dear examiner, it might be your first time to hear the story of the three little pigs. The examiner went out of the room. The examiner called the country examinations manager and asked, kindly ask Niner if Niner is the one teaching three little pigs to the candidates. What does 9.0 Niner do now? We don't want to spoon feed by giving you a generic answer, but we teach you to bring out the best in you. You have to be creative. You have to think of something that the examiner has never heard before. I'll give you a perfect example. Tell me something about your favorite flower. Come on, guys. I'm sure you have plenty of possible answers in your head. Let's take a look at the sample responses of our candidates before I give you an idea of what I responded to my examiner when this one came out in my own IELTS. Will you please tell me? Okay, so SJ Peñaranda said sunflower. What about the others? Janice Almojuela, Daisy, Jerel Serrano, Alanis, Rose. Okay, class, I have nothing against those flowers. It's just that they're the answers of most of the candidates. Say, for instance, one candidate told me, Sir, ang sa akin, sir, white rose. I said, rose pa rin yan, te. So you think of something different. So when it came out in my very own speaking subtest, I responded, oh, the flowers that I'll never forget are the dashing daffodils of Florida. Back! Daffodil. So, what are we teaching you guys? You think of something different. Something that's unheard of. Something that's not as common as rose or daisy or sunflower. You think of peony, dandelion, amaryllis.
Amaryllis.
What about this one? Tell me something about your favorite part of your house. Okay, come on, guys. Favorite part of your house. Let me see your answers. Favorite part of your house. Oh, before I read the responses, the others are saying sampaguita, waling-waling. I have nothing against them. But if it's difficult for you to describe them in English, I would rather that you avoid answers that are not in English. If you're asked about your favorite food, do not say dinakdakan, dinengdeng, pigar-pigar, danggit. A white examiner might say, what is that? Will you please describe it in English? And then you're having a difficulty in looking for the right word to describe it in English. So if you're asked about your favorite food, what are you supposed to say? So that you don't have to describe it in English, fried chicken, beef steak. We're not teaching you to tell lies. But remember, the speaking subtest is not a lie detector test. It is a test of your ability to communicate in English. That's why you have to stick to English from beginning to end. Where are the responses? Okay, there's attic, pantry, kitchen, movie room, so short. Sana all my movie room. Loo, oh, I like that. Loo. Kitchen, pantry, storage. Okay, so someone said comfort room. By the way, comfort room does not exist in other countries. It only exists in the Philippines. So, if you're in another country, you say, where's the washroom? Where's the toilet? Okay, where's the loo? Do not say comfort room. A white person, when hearing the comfort room, oh my God, what happens in the comfort room?
Hugs, massage.
So, now you're going to ask me, what's my favorite part of my house? I'll begin by responding, you know what, my favorite part of my house is not my bedroom, not my kitchen, not even my bathroom. Why? Because if you start with something that is not, it creates interest. The examiner might be thinking, ay talaga? Hindi yan? Ano pala? Class, it's a matter of getting the attention of the examiner, holding it down the line until the very end. So if you're going to ask me for my favorite part of my house, it is definitely my symbolic staircase. Why? I'm usually seated in the middle of my symbolic staircase, and when I look downwards, it reminds me of the problems I've encountered in life in the past. And when I look up, they resemble what's ahead of me. Obstacles, hindrance to my success. But it's only through them that I will become an even better person. That is why, of all places in my house, I'd love to stay in the middle of my symbolic staircase, even if I am from a bungalow type of house. Diba?
Wrong.
What are we teaching you guys? Don't think of answers that the examiners have heard a million times before. You think of something different. That's the reason why we have content speaking classes to tell you the usual questions that come out in the exam, and we teach you to think of an entirely different approach, the non-stereotypical, non-conventional approach. In fact, our students messaged us after the exam, "Sir, it's only now I realized the importance of attending content speaking lecture and final coaching plus the speaking handout. Because even if the examiner is not yet finished asking the question, I already recognize the question because it's something I saw beforehand. So, sir, I did not panic anymore. All I did was just to deliver the answer I thought beforehand. So, sir, I'm very thankful because you gave us an idea of what's likely to come out in the examination. Now, some students also message us in Tagalog and they say, "Sir, totoo pala. Lumalabas pala talaga sa totoong buhay yung mga tanong na pinamimigay ng Niner." And I also responded to them in Tagalog and I told them, "Ay, oo nga naman. Dahil ang mga tanong na yan ay hango din naman sa totoong buhay. Hindi naman gawa-gawa lang ng bakla yung mga tanong na yan. They came out. They will come out. That's why we give them to you beforehand." So, we feed you with the questions, we generate ideas together, and the point of the one-on-one coaching every day from Monday to Sunday to allow you to practice, and someone is there to give you feedback. Well, you can talk to anyone, any speaking partner, any speaking buddy, but do these people know if you have what it takes to get a 7 in the speaking subtest? That's why we have qualified coaches who are paid to talk to you every day. That's the point of the one-on-one coaching. From 8 a.m. to 5 a.m., 21 hours a day, it's impossible that you're not going to get a coaching slot. So, enough with the content-based tips. What about vocabulary and grammar? Sir Philip, would you like to open up the discussion related to vocab and grammar?
One of the main differences with performing regarding grammar and vocabulary in the speaking test versus the writing test is that in the writing test you have time to think about what's the best word to use, how do I paraphrase this, what's the past perfect progressive tense again, should I put a stop here or not yet. So in writing you get time to formulate your language, but in speaking it is by default real time. So therefore your natural grammar, your natural language, that is what is going to come out. So therefore this means that it is practice, familiarity with the structures of the language that you need to develop during your preparation for the exam. So I would like to point out that there is such a thing as having an ear for the language. For example, if I say, "The boys are playing basketballs," no? For example, it sounds wrong, right? Even if you don't really understand why grammatically, you know it's wrong because you never hear it like that. The boys plays basketball. Even if you don't know that it's the subject-verb agreement that's wrong with it, it's just ang pangit niyang pakinggan. And the fact that you have this sense, this ear for the language, means that you are used to hearing it, the boys play basketball, instead of the boys plays basketball. Developing this ear for grammar is what is going to help you perform well for this criterion. 25% in the IELTS and 6 points in the OET speaking. So exposure to correct grammar, to correct English grammar, is what's going to make the difference because you imbibe it. If you expose yourself to correct language again and again and again, they would sound normal. And therefore your language shifts as well. Wouldn't you agree, Sir Irvin?
Obviously. So for grammar, what do? We conduct 7 grammar classes. At the same time, we conduct 3 grammar exams. For vocabulary, 2 vocab classes, 2 vocab exams. All of these are offered to help you perform well in both writing and speaking. Remember that these 2 criteria, vocab and grammar, matter in the 2 subtests of writing and speaking. So this is the point of the lectures. We want you to attend the class first. But sir, I'm working. I cannot attend the live and interactive online lecture. What do I do? That's the reason why we are making them available on your dashboard. So even if, let's say, it's 1 a.m. Saudi time, or 3 a.m. South Africa time, or 4 p.m. Northern Marianas time, you can watch these lectures again and again because they are recorded and uploaded to the dashboard. Remember, you can't go to high school without finishing grade school. And what exactly do I mean by this? We have to go back to the fundamentals, to the basics. The others keep on practicing, but they're missing the point. It's not practice that will help you pass the examination. It's correct practice. It's guided practice. So, for vocabulary, we don't teach our students to use complicated language. Instead, we tell them to use correct words and to avoid repetition. That's why we're conducting classes like vocabulary for IELTS, so that you get to know what are the proper terms in writing task 1, in writing task 2. For instance, moreover, these are words that are acceptable in writing task 2, but not so much in writing task 1. Or, there are expressions that are acceptable in speaking, but not so much in writing. All that and more will be discussed by the lecturers during the vocabulary classes and grammar classes. But we need you to do your part. We have to work hand in hand. We can just offer everything, and here you are, registering for the examination without our go signal. In our case, the moment you open your mouth, we already know what grade you're going to get in the examination. In writing, the moment I read the introduction, I already know if it's going to get 7 or not. Because we've been doing this for almost half of our life. We need you to cooperate. We cannot move mountains. You have to maximize what we are offering. So if there are lectures, attend the lectures. Can't attend them? There's a recorded version. There's one-on-one coaching. And with 21 hours per day, 7 days a week, it's impossible that you're not going to get a coaching slot. We have 36 coaches. We have 36 instructors. All are IELTS and OET passers. So that's the case on how you can possibly improve your vocabulary and grammar with the help of the qualified teachers. You don't just entrust your future to anyone. Remember, this is a costly mistake. So in IELTS, it's fluency, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. In OET, Sir Philip, I believe there are more criteria that examiners assess.
There are a lot more. This was an update from version 1.0 of the OET to version 2.0. There was great overlap between the criteria of IELTS and OET at the beginning. But now there are specifically linguistic criteria which assess your English itself, fluency, intelligibility, which is the same as pronunciation, grammar, and appropriateness of language, which correspond to fluency, pronunciation, grammar, and lexical resource in the IELTS exam. However, there are 5 communicative criteria in the OET speaking, which are used in order to evaluate your performance in speaking that is particular to a healthcare conversation. Because unlike in the IELTS, where it's meant to be a casual conversation between a friend or a colleague, here in OET, it is you, a healthcare professional, interacting with someone who is asking for help, a layperson, either a patient or a relative. And therefore, your communication must adapt, and there are certain features that you must express. Although before I go to that, I'd like to go back a little bit to vocabulary and appropriateness of language. 2 things. 1, it is important for you to attend the classes and in order for you to know the fundamentals. At the same time, it is also important for you to go beyond these classes because although very few students ever complete all of the videos, and we can tell whether you have watched the video or not. Sir Brian can tell whether we have watched the videos or not. Ultimately, you have to see words in action. You have to read. You really do. There are no shortcuts to that. You do not gain words through a dictionary or a thesaurus. You get words when you read. No? So please read whatever you want. Read something that interests you. Read the newspaper. It's new every day because it's the news. Go read something that catches your interest. Please do so that your stock of words would become much richer and you would have a greater arsenal to choose from come your actual exam. That's the first thing. Please read. The second thing is that when it comes to OET, in terms of appropriateness of language, which is vocabulary, a common critique for OET candidates is that people tend to have a tendency to use unexplained jargon when talking to laypersons. Like, guys, I'm a nurse, and I'm a nurse. You're probably either a nurse if you're taking the OET or a related healthcare professional. There are words that we have heard for years and years. We've heard them thousands of times, like cardiomyopathy or pulmonary or nephropathy or stuff like that. Aspiration, you know what they are, intubation, but these laypersons, they're hearing them for the first time. Do not assume that the familiarity that you have with these words that you got after reading all the textbooks over a period of years, that our laypersons would be able to understand in a matter of like 5 minutes. Compassion for these laypersons who did not go through an anatomy class, who did not go through med-surg class, something like that. Understandably, we, of course, when we think about these concepts, liver disease, heart disease, metformin, paracetamol, coamoxiclav, we think about them using the language that we used in order to learn them, the language of our textbooks, the language of our professors, the language of our schools. That's fine. However, you are not talking in order for you to understand yourself, but rather you are talking so that, given your knowledge, you would be able to transmit this knowledge, use this knowledge for the benefit of someone who does not have it. So it is critical for you to laymanize your explanations, to use appropriate vocabulary that is understandable by lay persons. Try explaining what dialysis is, for example, to your grandmother. Or maybe you could explain how a kidney transplant would or would not solve the need for dialysis to somebody who doesn't even know what dialysis means. Developing empathy and sensitivity and attentiveness to the language that our laypersons are using to understand their health condition, and adapting our own language so that they would understand what we're saying is a critical component when performing well when it comes to appropriateness of language. We discuss this in greater detail during class, of course, but this is definitely something to keep in mind. So those are the 4 linguistic criteria in OET: fluency, intelligibility, appropriateness of language, and grammar. However, unlike the IELTS, there are a lot more criteria. There are 5 communicative criteria. So the first is structure, building relationships, incorporating the patient's views, getting information, and giving information. Suffice to say that all of these 5 criteria are discussed in great detail during our classes. We strongly invite you to attend them. But very briefly, structure. You get points in structure if you're able to organize your speech in a manner that makes it easier for the layperson to understand what you're saying. And a useful technique here is for you to perform signposting. What's a signpost? Like, imagine you're in a highway, right? You're in a highway, and then you see a post, Jollibee, 5 kilometers away. And then you see another post, Jollibee, 3 kilometers away. So therefore, when you finally see the Jollibee, you're prepared for it. You would have been thinking about the Chicken Joy for like several minutes already. So it's something that you've anticipated. Same thing. When we're explaining things to our laypersons, we tend to go on and on and on and on and on and on. We are vomiting so much information. So therefore, it is important for us to warn our laypersons ahead of time what it is that we're going to say, so that their brains would have enough time to prepare to receive this information. Let me give you an example. Ma'am, when it comes to dialysis, there are 3 main stages. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So you see, before you go on talking about all 3 stages, you inform the layperson ahead of time. There are 3 things that he should expect. This makes a difference. So you would be given 3 minutes anyway before the roleplay begins for you to see what is going to happen in the roleplay. So you would have sufficient time not only to determine which parts there would require signposting, but also to understand what the sequence of information would be. So just make an effort to give it. So that's structure. The second thing is building relationship. Now there are different factors that come into play here, but one very important thing is empathy. There will always, 100% of the time, there will always be an emotion that your layperson would be expressing. Our patients are not machines. They're people. Sometimes they're hostile because the call bell hasn't been answered. Sometimes they're withdrawn because they're scheduled to die in 2 months and they are not very cooperative anymore. Sometimes they're curious because they encountered something that they want to know more about. It depends. Sometimes they're angry, sometimes they're worried. Your job is to respond and empathize with this emotion. Your interlocutors are paid quite a lot of money in order for them to give a genuine layperson experience. So, and part of that is acting. So you're not expected to act, but when the interlocutor expresses, for example, grief, then you say something like, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." Now, the thing to remember there is that although it is common for people to say, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," it tends to be delivered in a flat tone, in a flat affect tone. "I'm sorry to hear that." This means that you don't actually sound sorry. So it is critical for you to texture your delivery. Oh, move your face. If you're sorry, then, scrunch it a little bit. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." Or if you're happy, the layperson tells you something that's good. "Hey sir, I've been trying to quit smoking for 5 years now, and finally I've made progress from 10 sticks a day to 9 sticks a day." What do you say? "Oh, that's good for you. Good for you. I'm happy to hear that." Something like that. It's easier for you to mirror the emotion of the layperson if you are looking at your interlocutor's eyes. It is understandable, of course, for this to be hard because you are both wearing masks. So not only do you have to texture your voice and to project it at the same time, but it's good for you to be looking at the interlocutor so that the emotions can manifest much more easily. So points yun, empathy when it comes to building relationship. So the first we have structure. First, communicative criteria. The second is building relationship. The third is incorporating the patient's views. As we mentioned earlier, doing well in OET speaking is not, in IELTS as well, it's not just a matter of speaking, but it's also a matter of listening. And we are not Google. We are not supposed to just vomit all of our knowledge to the layperson, but rather we must adjust our responses based on what the layperson actually needs. A good example of this would be what intervention do you recommend to somebody who is trying to quit smoking? Do you suggest nicotine patch? Do you suggest support groups? Do you suggest exercise? Which intervention you're going to suggest out of the many interventions that you know of must depend on the unique circumstances of the unique person that is in front of you. There's no such thing as a generic person. They don't exist. But rather, there are always only people who have gone through a specific set of experiences with a specific set of concerns. How do you know what they are? Listen. And based on what input you receive, what the input that, by the way, your interlocutor is doing his best to give to you, and he's hoping that you pay attention to them, based on this input, therefore you will adjust your response. So that is the third communicative criterion, incorporating the patient's views. The fourth communicative criterion is getting information. It is important for you to ask proper questions. Now, there are many factors to think about there, but one that I would like to emphasize is it is good for you to show sensitivity when you encounter sensitive topics. You won't always be given sensitive topics. Sometimes that roleplay card goes to somebody else. But sometimes you get that roleplay card where the issue is something that requires a little sensitivity. Konting preno. No? For example, rape or abuse or death or STDs or something like that, it is critical for you to not treat it as if it's nothing, but rather to give it the consideration it deserves. CC, contextualize why you're asking questions, and ask for consent if it is okay to ask questions. So you don't go straight into it, but rather you first explain why you're asking, why are you going there? Why are you trespassing into this territory that usually is not supposed to be talked about, because you want to express care. And second, ask for permission to talk about it. Contextualization and ask for consent. The last communicative criterion is giving information when you are the one who has to deliver. Now, critically, it's important for you to do this through chunking. You know what chunks are, like pineapple chunks, essentially one at a time. Let me do that again. One at a time. If you divide things into separate, discrete parts, you give your layperson a chance to digest and to think about it and to ask questions before moving to the next part. It becomes a lot more understandable. So that after all, the goal here is not for you to talk at rapid speed, but rather the goal is for that layperson who went to you for help actually understands. So this means that if the layperson asks you about diabetes and there are 5 things that you want to talk about regarding diabetes, you don't go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, but rather you talk about 1, stop, and then ask, does he understand? And that is the only time that you proceed to the second part. So don't be uncomfortable with pauses. You get minus in fluency if your pauses are too long, like you have a mind blank or something like that. But some pauses are necessary. Some pauses are useful, precisely again because your job is not just to talk, but rather to communicate. This is something that is emphasized, I think, both in IELTS and in the OET. So, quick overview. There are 5 communicative criteria: structure, building relationships, incorporating the patient's views, getting information, and giving information. You notice that there's a lot of them, right? There are a total of 9 criteria that are assessed in different ways. I understand that it is a bit overwhelming. And that is why during coaching, the coach would not be talking about all of these criteria in the time that's allotted. Of course not. But rather, the coach would be focusing on the most important criteria, the aspects of your performance that you need to change the most. And then you change that, and then you work on that with your coach over the course of several sessions. And when that's okay, then we go to the next one. You don't try to improve everything at the same time. Nothing happens that way. You spread yourself too thin. Your focus is fragmented. It's important for you to have one thing to focus on. And when you're good with that, then you move on to the next one. So, though assessment in the OET, it's just like in the IELTS, is holistic, progress towards it is sequential. One at a time. And that's what 9.09 is for. We would help you through this process, which is long because skills take time to practice. But we will be with you every step of the way.
Okay, so I just checked the time. It's 8:55.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
imagine Sir Philip does this for OET speaking 3 hours. I do it for 3 hours. And we're just given almost 2 hours to ensure that every important detail is tackled. Well, we're giving you an overview of the examination. That's why now is the time for you to ask questions, okay? Before you ask these questions, I'll just announce the weekly winner of the refund, okay? So, every week we're going to determine a reviewee who's going to win a full refund of the review fee. And I'm happy to inform you that the winner for this week is from Quezon Province. So, her name is Ana Chelsea Pabellano. So, Miss Ana Chelsea Pabellano, we're going to give you a refund of 3,666 pesos as payment for your OET review. We're going to coordinate with you, and please let us know how you want to receive your refund amounting to 3,666 pesos. Maybe in the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes, we can accommodate questions related to IELTS speaking and OET speaking. So, next weekend, that's March 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. But if you've noticed, our master classes never really lasted for just an hour because both of us are talkative. So, it's flexible. It could be until 8:30 or 9 p.m. We're going to talk about the most important subtest for all IELTS and OET examinees, writing. A lot of people pass listening and reading. 50% of people pass speaking, but fewer people make it in the writing subtest. If you're free, why don't you invite your friends on Sunday? So if you think that this content is helpful because you were not charged while attending this Facebook Live session, pay it forward by please sharing it to your friends or to Facebook groups or to anyone, who's going to take IELTS or OET. So I just need to do it this way because I have to read questions, okay? Please keep those questions coming. We still have more than 500 live viewers. Next week, we're going to announce the winner of the free IELTS exam or 50% discount on OET examination fee. That's 11,300 pesos. So Lizzie says, thank you, Niner. Thank you, Sir Irvin. Thank you, Sir Philip. You're welcome. Okay, we have a question here from Ann Marmito, Peru. Question, sir, how long is it practically advisable before we are to take the IELTS exam? Well, it depends on your performance during the review, but if you want to ask us, the average is 2 to 3 months. But the coach will give you the go signal. How to avoid P and F in pronunciation? That's a question from Hennessy. Well, you need to have the ear for that. You record yourself while you're talking and then be your own coach, be your own examiner. Try to pinpoint your speech defects and try to work out on them. How to make sure that you pronounce clearly? You open your mouth. Roy Palma, hoo-hoo writing. Instead of writing hoo-hoo writing, why don't you say hooray writing?
Yeah.
You have to look forward to it. That's the positive attitude. That's the winning mentality. If you're afraid to learn, then it won't end up favorable for you. So you have to look forward to it. You need to enjoy learning. Michelle Kulanag Kanindot. Oo gang, nindot jud gang. Anak jud no. Okay.
Gibberish.
Who else? Sharing done. Oh, thank you, Agnes. Anna Chelsea Pabellano. Hi, Anna Chelsea Pabellano. Congratulations. You see, the winner is here tonight. At least alam nyo, hindi etchos yung winners namin. Oh, ito, totoong tao po siya. Anna Chelsea Pabellano. Hooray! Congratulations! Do we have more questions here? You're welcome, Anna Chelsea Pabellano. May Ann Minzu. Sir, I already registered with IDP because I was thinking to do self-review, but I definitely changed my mind and I want to be guided by Niner. Will I still make it? Well, we are here to help. All you have to do is to let us know your the subjects that you want to prioritize, especially because you have a test date already. Let us know your target band score and your target destination, and let's maximize remaining weeks. Rochelle, proud Niner baby, hooray. Allison Janie, hi sir, what is your beauty regimen? Ring light lang te, char. Jeffrey, late to tune in. No problem, because we're going to upload this to our Facebook account right after the Facebook Live session. So, you can watch it from the very beginning. Who else? Do we have more questions? Jessica Cañete, hooray! I passed the IELTS, received my report card last Wednesday. Congratulations to our reviewee from Pangasinan, Jessica Fiesta Cañete. More questions? Do you have enrollment promo for OET? Yes. Kindly message us on Facebook. But if you're wondering how come the responses are quite late now, well, that's because I'm here. I'm talking. Okay, I cannot respond and talk at the same time. Angela Fell, I should have chosen the only offer instead of 1 month only. Oh, we don't offer 1 month only. Our minimum is 1 year unlimited. Who else?
We don't have one.
Lizelle Argamino. Do you offer review po ba? Sorry, Bisaya. Kahit wala sa Pilipinas, yes, we have reviewees from all continents, and because of our flexible review schedule, the recorded lectures, and the 21 hours coaching slots per day, we can accommodate anyone, everyone for that matter. Bobby Frondoza, any promos upcoming? Well, I might be announcing tomorrow night our promo for March. Mika Diaz, that's 2012, but kindly send us your tracking card and the proof of enrollment, because I have to check if it's with a minor branch, a provincial branch, or a major branch. Christine Bantugon, is there any promo? Yeah, our 14th anniversary promo we're going to announce soon. SJ Peñaranda, is it Andy Coaching? Yes, every day. Okay? As long as you book early. So as early as now, you can book for Tuesday, tomorrow, you can book for Wednesday, and so on. John Eric Caballo, sir, dito sa Gensan, 1 day lang po lahat ang tests. Depending on how many people are taking the exam, because what if there's 80 of you? There is a possibility for the examination to be conducted in 2 days. Speaking might be on a different day. Lloyd Herente, do you have offer for PTE? Yes. Donnie Corpus, do you have another promo this March? Yes. We'll announce it soon, our 14th anniversary promo. Kwe Lie Sho. If medyo mababa ang score sa IELTS, if I take sa March, pwede pa rin ako mag-continue mag-review after the exam. Yes, it's unlimited, okay? We do not restrict you from attending the classes just because you took the examination already. And Peru, do we need to personally enroll? You can do it personally enroll in one of your branches, or we can do it online. Online is the key. We have passers from Namibia. There's Jonathan Jordan. We have passers from Malta, from Guyana, from Libya, from Papua New Guinea. They haven't been to the Philippines, but we made them pass the examination with flying colors. EAPTTS. I booked my exam in IDP. Now I want to change it to computer-based. You have to message IDP because they might have ordered the test paper already. Jeffrey Doctolero, you sound really clear and fluent. Hope I can practice English the way that you do. Sir Philip, how do you improve speaking? By speaking. Okay? It starts from there. It's not as if we were born with this tongue. As a Bisaya, my first language is Bisaya. I was born and raised in Davao. My second language, Tagalog. Third language, English. But I haven't used that as an excuse why I cannot deliver eloquently, articulately, and fluently. It's not something I was born with. It's something that you learn by practice. Okay, Nelly Hilario. How do you deal with a question that you don't have an idea? Oh, this is how you respond to that. Excuse me, my dear examiner. I don't pretend to be a genius. I'm not saying that I know everything. I'm not really familiar with this topic, but let me try my best to answer that question. That's when you start talking even if you're unsure. What's the point of the disclaimer in the beginning? You're giving the examiner an idea. Hey, you know what? I'm not really sure, but at least you see I'm talking. Because remember, when you talk, there is something to assess. If you do not talk, there is nothing to assess. So, prove to your examiner you have what it takes to pass the speaking subtest, and this is no place for shy people. This is a place for assertive, confident people who know that they have what it takes to get at least 7 and go abroad.
In addition to that, if you're asked a question in the IELTS that you're unfamiliar with, for example, what is your favorite type of unicorn? You have no idea about types of unicorns, but you know what unicorns are. Then you could, after giving that disclaimer, say, I'm sorry, I'm not really very familiar with the kinds of unicorn, but I know that unicorns are a mythological creature that is my favorite emoji to use in text messages. Or something like that. So you focus on the keyword that you are familiar with, and then you go on from there.
Okay, Jonica is asking, Sir, I enrolled in November. Can I still join one-on-one speaking session? Yeah, it's one. Oh, you enrolled November last year, so it's still valid until October of this year. It's just Feb 28. You still have the next few months to enjoy your unlimited coaching sessions. Angela Fell, 1 month intensive. Which branch is that? We are Niner Maine. We are Niner Manila. I don't know if there is a branch offering 1 month intensive.
Yeah.
Miriam Lopez, I want to review with you guys. How can I enroll? Please message us. We'll send you the payment options. There's BDO, BPI, GCash, PayPal. I only have 40 days before IELTS exam. Need to double time. Just enrolled now. Well, 40 days, that's plenty of time if you're going to maximize the time. But 40 days, that's short if you're not going to attend classes or go for the one-on-one coaching sessions. Let's make the most out of it. We are here to help, but God's help those who help themselves as well. Reviewee from Pangasinan, can I avail the only one-on-one coaching? Where did you enroll? Did you pay Niner Pangasinan or did you pay Niner Manila? Because for Niner Manila, one-on-one coaching is daily, Monday to Sunday, 21 hours of available coaching slots daily. Lizzie, how about assistance for the registration of OET? When OET started to ask for credit card details, we'd rather not process the registration because it gets to be complicated when you reveal to us your bank account details. Definitely, we are not going to get your credit card or debit card details for your own protection. We'd rather that you do it on your own so that we don't get your bank details. But we'll send you the link or where you can possibly register for the exam. Yumi Duran, advisable po ba everyday mag-review for 2 to 3 months? Mas malaki po ba ang chance na makapasa? Shifting hours po kasi ang work ko and sometimes I can't focus on reviewing. Well, if you allot more time, there is a higher probability for you to improve. But more time does not always guarantee success. When you review, you have to be smart. Don't just keep on reviewing and commit exactly the same mistakes. Learn from your mistakes after one coaching session. You internalize, think what went wrong, and work on that so that the next one-on-one coaching session, you already get to know what to avoid. Okay?
Reflective practice is important.
Kath Del Mundo, hindi ma-view sa dashboard yung new lectures. It just requires upgrade, my dear. Please email training@nineronlinereview.com. Chandra Reyes, I hope I win the refund next time. Well, there's a refund every week. Who knows? It might be your turn. Can I take the OET instead of IELTS or I need to enroll also in OET classes? If I'm not mistaken, Niner Pangasinan does not offer OET review classes. So OET review classes are offered by Niner Manila. G. Lopez, any feedback regarding the new testing center in Davao? Last week, I spoke with both British Council and IDP, and for now, it's only IDP conducting the examination in Davao. Remember, we're not endorsing IDP in Davao, but they're the only one conducting the exam in Davao right now. That's why we go back to our point in the beginning, check the available test dates and available venues, and from there, you decide. So, sometimes, by default, you don't have a choice but to go for IDP because they're the only one conducting examination in Davao right now. May Ann, today's the last day for the 4,000 Feb promo, right? Yes. I took the exam almost 10 years ago. My lowest was writing and reading. What can you suggest to improve? Well, for writing, see you next week, Sunday, for our writing masterclass. That's also free of charge. For reading, we've done a free reading masterclass 2 weeks ago. Message us. I'll send you the link for the free reading masterclass. Okay, Hazel Chavez, how can I enroll? My working hours between 10 to 10 KSA time. Well, if we have recorded versions of the classes and we had passers from Saudi Arabia and the entire Middle East, then that also means we can also help you in getting the required band score. Jen De Castro, we have schedule of topics to be tackled in PCAMPA branch next week. Well, Miss Isa usually handles skills enhancement classes, common mistakes classes, and content classes, plus mock examination, plus grammar and vocab. Riza Lee, do you allow face-to-face coaching? Well, face-to-face classes at PCAMPA España, Manila branch. But for the one-on-one coaching, it's conveniently done online. All you need is Facebook Messenger. Wherever you are, you can have it at the comfort of your own home. You can even do it while you're working in the hospital during your break time. Okay, so I guess that's more than enough time. That's 9:12 p.m. I have to go back to my replying duties. So, once again, this is Sir Philip Edward Aitona, 9.0 in speaking, 9.0 in reading, 9.0 in listening, 9.0 overall band score, 8.0 in writing, plus in OET, perfect A in speaking, perfect A in reading, perfect A in listening, B in writing. I am Sir Irvin Neal A. Temporal, 9.0 in speaking, 9.0 in reading, 9.0 in listening, 8.0 in writing. Thanking you for your time. Mark your calendars. Sir Brian's free online class, March 6, Saturday, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. via Zoom. Free for all. And our next Facebook Live session, that's March 7, Sunday, 7 p.m. Up to Sawa. Okay? Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Take care.
Finish.